We're back with Chatt Wright, president of Hawaii Pacific University since 1972, in which he grew enrollment from 57 students to over 9,000 from 112 countries.
Let's talk about how you grew the size of the university. We're talking about 9,000 students now when we started with, 57 initially. How does that actually occur? I mean, are there specific milestones that were met, and then was there a turning point? How did that happen? Or just a steady growth over a period of time?
Well, as it turned out, looking back, it was a steady growth. There were spurts to it, of course, but it never declined. It always went forward. But it started with strategic planning, have an overall mission. I think the mission, we didn't express it the same way that it is articulated now, but really it was to educate for global citizenship. And this meant to bring students, starting with Asia first, from Asia to Hawaii, then going to other parts of the world, to then Europe, to South America, to Africa, to bring students to Hawaii to study here with students from Hawaii. And the major goal, the major focus was to broaden the experiences of people from Hawaii, to open their eyes up to the many cultures and peoples from all over the world. It's very easy for us to sit here in Hawaii and we say, yes, there's people from all different racial and ethnic backgrounds. But really, back in the 1960s and 70s, Hawaii was a very isolated state. It was America's youngest state. It was emerging. People were first and second generation Americans, a lot of them from Asia. So there was a new experience here. And so people were focused in on being part of Hawaii, focused in and becoming Americans. Well, we wanted to go beyond that. We wanted to say, yes, it's good that you are Americans. Your ancestors are from, starting with Asia first, later from Europe and South America. Secondly, but you are also global citizens. You're going to be working then and doing business with people worldwide. And that mission, I believe, is the reason why Hawaii Pacific has done so well. People come to be part of a global culture, to learn about people's and cultures from all over the world. And I think that's the primary driving force which has made Hawaii Pacific University. Back in the earlier days, back in the 70s and 80s, I was the first person that represented Hawaii Pacific in traveling. I traveled and made presentations starting in Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, went to countries throughout Asia.
Are they trade shows, or are you pitching the government, or how does that?
Well, it was all of that. I would go to university and college fairs, much like we have in America. They have those in Asia and had those at that time. I would visit the international schools in each of the major cities, and I would visit classrooms, college counselors, high school counselors that are counseling high school graduates to go abroad. I would give presentations in hotel rooms, say in Tokyo, for instance, some of the leading hotels, to audiences as large as 600 or 700. I would have translators with me. I would have, in those days, just slides, and I would show them what Hawaii looked like, what our college looked like. I would tell them about the programs and what our philosophy was. And I'd go from city to city. Later, as we grew, other people were delegated this, and now we have people representing us. We have somebody living in Bangkok now that goes all over Asia for us. It's an HPU alum. We have somebody living in Stockholm now, an HPU alumna, who represents us in Europe. And we have regional representatives all over North America who travel and go to universities and colleges, college fairs, and to high schools.
Were you signing these people up for enrollment right there? I mean, they're getting applications out during these
sometimes. I mean, I would have to do it alone in the earlier days. There weren't many of us, but ultimately in time we had a whole staff that would do that. Mainly we'd have the brochures and catalogs, and the applications were in those, and then they would mail them back to us. But I would give a lot of personal counseling to some of the potential students, and especially parents, because the parents were the ones that paid for the education.
How is Stockholm different? I know that the Swedish, there's a huge population within Hawaii Pacific University. Is the university much better represented in that area, or they see a different appeal? What is that?
Well, you are quite right, Evan. The largest group of international students comes from Sweden. We have close to 400 Swedish students now. The second largest group comes from Japan. But Sweden is an interesting country. There are only 8.5 million people there. It's a very small country. It's a very affluent country. Probably the standard of living in Sweden is as high as any country worldwide. And the Swedish government only allows a small number of young Swedish students to go on to their own universities. Only 3% of the students are even allowed into the public universities there. So that means a very large number are encouraged to become educated abroad. Traditionally, the Swedes went to Germany after World War II. They went to the UK, to England, and then later to America. And a number of we have more Swedes at Hawaii Pacific than any other university outside of Sweden right now.
I heard I don't know if it's an urban legend, but when I was going to school at Hawaii Pacific University, they said that there was a person who's now a government official came from Sweden and liked it so much, and he does quite a bit over there. Is that myth, or is that real?
Well, that's a little bit of myth. There was a woman who did that, who was elected to Parliament there, and she was a Hawaii Pacific student. She wasn't the one that really did that. She came to us because of the presentations there. She liked the experience here and became a real advocate for us.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.